The morning started like any other morning for Commander Jake Morrison. He stood at the wide window of the space station, looking down at New Haven, the blue and green planet that had become humanity's second home. Ships moved back and forth between the planet and space like busy ants carrying food to their nest. Some carried fresh food from the farms below, while others brought metal and machines from the factories in orbit. Jake had been watching these ships for 3 years now. He knew the captains by their flying styles and could tell which ships carried what just by how they moved. The big, slow ones always had grain or water. The fast, small ones carried people or important messages. Today felt normal, but something was different in a way he could not explain. Dr. Lisa Carter was in her lab on the other side of the station, working on the strange rocks they had found on Kepler 442b. The rocks were old, maybe older than Earth itself. They had pictures carved into them that looked like they might be writing from some alien people who lived there long ago. Lisa had spent months trying to understand what the pictures meant, but so far they made no sense. She was looking at one rock under her big microscope when her computer made a sound. A message had come in from the deep space radio station near the edge of their solar system. The message was short and simple. They could not reach Colony 7 anymore. The radio was not working. Lisa did not think much about it at first. Radio problems happened all the time in space. Too much radiation from stars or solar storms could break the signals. But then another message came in 20 minutes later. Colony 12 was also not answering their calls. Then Colony 3 went quiet. Then Colony 15. Captain Ben Hayes was flying his ship Aurora through space toward the mining colony on Titan 7 when the first real distress call came through his radio. The voice was scared and hard to understand through all the static and noise. The man was shouting about ships that came from nowhere and weapons that turned buildings into dust. Ben could hear explosions and screaming in the background before. The signal cut out completely. Ben tried to call back, but got no answer. He changed course and pushed his engines to maximum speed toward Titan 7. The trip usually took 6 hours, but Ben made it in 4. When he got there, he found nothing but empty space where the mining station should have been. No buildings. Number. Ships, no people. Just small pieces of metal floating where thousands of people had been living and working. Just hours before. Back on the space station, Jake was getting worried. More colonies had stopped talking. The pattern was clear now. Something was moving through human space and destroying everything in its path. The attacks always happened the same way. First, the long-range sensors went dark. Then the communication stations stopped working. Then nothing but silence. Admiral Kate Sullivan was the highest-ranking military officer in the sector, and she was starting to understand how bad things really were. Reports were coming in from all over human space. 17 colonies had gone. Silent in less than 3 days. That was over 2 million people who might be dead or missing. The colonies were too far apart for pirates or terrorists to hit them all so fast. This had to be something else. Kate called a meeting with all the ship captains and colony leaders who could still communicate. They met in the big conference room on the Central Space Station. The room was full of worried faces. Everyone had the same questions, but no one had answers. Captain Ryan Mitchell had just arrived from the outer colonies with a ship full of refugees. His ship Vengeance was designed to carry a crew of 200, but now had over 1,000 people, packed into every available space. The refugees told stories that were hard to believe. Ships that appeared out of nowhere and moved faster than anything humans had ever built. Weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. Aliens that looked nothing like humans and seemed to have no interest in taking prisoners. Dr. Carter presented what little information they had been able to gather. The attack ships were using technology that was far ahead of anything humans had developed. Their weapons worked in ways that human science could not explain. They could travel between stars faster than human ships, and their weapons could punch through the strongest. Shields like they were made of paper. The refugees all told similar stories. The alien ships would appear without warning near a human colony. They would destroy all the defense ships first, then begin bombing the planet below. They did not try to communicate. They did not demand surrender. They just destroyed everything until nothing was left alive. One refugee named Mary told them about her home on Colony 12. She had been working in her garden when the sky turned bright white. When she looked up, she saw enormous ships hanging in the air above her town. The ships were black and shaped like nothing she had ever seen before. They made no sound, but beams of light came down from them, and everything the light touched simply disappeared. Mary ran to her house to get her children, but her house was gone. Her street was gone. Her children were gone. She found herself standing at the edge of a perfectly round hole in the ground that went down so deep she could not see the bottom. The hole was smooth like glass and completely empty. It was as if her entire neighborhood had never existed. Admiral Sullivan listened to all the reports and realized that humanity was facing something they had never dealt with before. This was not a war over territory or resources. The aliens were not trying to conquer human space. They were trying to wipe out every human being in the galaxy. It was genocide on a scale that was hard to imagine. The attacks were too coordinated and too fast to be random. Someone or something had planned this very carefully. They knew where all the human colonies were located. They knew which ones had the strongest defenses. They had attacked in exactly the right order to prevent humans from organizing a defense or evacuating people to safety. Jake Morrison looked out at the ships still moving between the station and New Haven below. In a few hours, or maybe a few days, those ships might be running for their lives instead of carrying cargo. The aliens had destroyed 17 colonies in 3 days. At that rate, they would reach New Haven and Earth itself within a week. The room fell silent as everyone realized the same thing at the same time. Humanity was not just under attack. Humanity was being hunted to extinction by something that had the power to wipe them out completely. The only question now, whether they could figure out a way to fight back before it was too late. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the command center, watching the biggest gathering of human ships in history. Every available vessel had been called back to Earth. Military ships, cargo haulers, passenger liners, mining ships, research vessels, and even small private boats had answered the call. There were over 3,000 ships of all sizes floating in space around Earth waiting for orders. Captain Ryan Mitchell brought his battlecruiser Vengeance alongside the command ship. His crew had barely slept in days as they helped coordinate the defense efforts. Every ship that arrived brought more refugees and more terrible news from the outer colonies. The alien attacks were getting closer to Earth with each passing hour. Dr. Lisa Carter had moved her research to the main command ship where she could work directly with the military leaders. The pieces of alien technology they had recovered were small, but they told a frightening story. The aliens called themselves the Zephyrins, and their technology was centuries ahead of human science. Their weapons could destroy matter at the atomic level, and their ships could travel through space in ways that broke the laws of physics as humans understood them. Lisa worked day and night trying to understand how the alien weapons functioned. She had a team of the best scientists from across human space, but they were making very little progress. Every time they thought they understood something about the alien technology, it would do something impossible that proved them wrong again. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Brooks was in charge of organizing the refugee camps that had been set up on Mars and the Moon. Every day more ships arrived carrying survivors from the destroyed colonies. The survivors all told the same story. The Zephyrians attacked without warning, destroyed everything, and left no one alive. Amy had to find places for millions of people to live while preparing for the battle that everyone knew was coming. The refugees were traumatized and afraid. Many had watched their families die or had seen their entire worlds destroyed in a matter of hours. Children asked where their parents were, and parents searched desperately for children who might have escaped on other ships. Amy tried to help them, but she knew that if the defense of Earth failed, all of their suffering would have been for nothing. Captain Ben Hayes had taken command of a small fleet of scout ships that were watching the outer edges of the solar system. His job was to give early warning when the Zephyrians arrived. He knew it was probably a suicide mission, but someone had to do it. The main fleet needed as much advance notice as possible to get into position. Ben and his crew spent their time checking and rechecking their equipment. Their ships were fast, but they would not be able to outrun the Zephyrian fleet for long. When the aliens arrived, Ben would have maybe 10 minutes to send a warning message before his ships were destroyed. It was not much time, but it might be enough to save some lives on Earth. Dr. Carter made a breakthrough on the 4th day when she discovered that the alien weapons used a type of energy that humans had never seen before. The energy could pass through normal matter like it was not there, but when it touched living tissue, it would cause the atoms to come apart. It was the perfect weapon for killing people while leaving buildings and machines undamaged. But there was something else strange about the alien technology. The weapons were designed to be very precise. They could kill every living thing in a city while leaving the buildings standing perfectly intact. Dr. Carter realized that the Zephyrians were not just destroying human colonies. They were preparing them for something else. Admiral Sullivan called another meeting of all the senior officers. The room was crowded with captains and generals from across human space. Everyone looked tired and worried. They all knew that Earth was probably going to be the site of humanity's last battle. The Admiral explained the situation as clearly as she could. The Zephyrian fleet was moving toward Earth and would arrive within the next 2 days. Human intelligence estimated that the alien fleet contained over 500 ships, each one more powerful than the biggest human warship. The human fleet was larger in number, but much weaker in firepower. Captain Mitchell asked the question that everyone was thinking. What was the plan? How could they possibly win against such overwhelming odds? Admiral Sullivan was quiet for a long moment before she answered. They probably could not win in a direct fight, but they might be able to buy enough time to evacuate some of the population to hidden bases in the asteroid belt. The plan was simple, but desperate. The human fleet would engage the Zephyrians as far from Earth as possible. They would fight a delaying action, trading ships for time while the evacuation proceeded. When the fleet was destroyed, the remaining humans would scatter to secret bases throughout the solar system and hope that some of them could survive long enough to rebuild. Carter presented her latest findings about the alien weapons. She had discovered that the Zephyrian energy beams were affected by certain types of electromagnetic fields. It was not much, but it might give human ships a small advantage if they could modify their shields properly. Every ship in the fleet began working to install the modifications she had designed. Captain Hayes sent the warning message on a Tuesday morning. His sensors had detected the Zephyrian fleet emerging from hyperspace near Pluto. The alien ships were moving toward Earth at incredible speed. Ben estimated they would reach the human defense line in less than 6 hours. His message was the last transmission his ship ever sent. The human fleet moved into position between Mars and Jupiter. Admiral Sullivan had chosen the location carefully. The asteroid belt would give smaller human ships places to hide and might confuse the alien sensors. It was not much of an advantage, but it was better than fighting in open space. The Zephyrians arrived exactly when Captain Hayes had predicted. Their ships appeared on the sensors as hundreds of bright dots moving in perfect formation. The alien fleet was beautiful in a terrible way. Their ships were sleek and dark and moved through space. Like living creatures swimming through water. Admiral Sullivan gave the order to attack. 3,000 human ships opened fire at the same time. Energy beams and missiles filled the space between the two fleets. For a moment, it looked like the human attack might actually damage the alien ships. Then the Zephyrians fired back. Their weapons cut through the human fleet like knives through paper. Dozens of ships disappeared in seconds. The human shields that Dr. Carter had designed helped a little, but not nearly enough. The battle that was supposed to buy time for evacuation was turning into a massacre. Captain Mitchell watched his sensor screen as ship after ship winked out of existence. The human fleet was fighting bravely, but they were being destroyed too quickly. At this rate, the entire fleet would be gone in less than an hour. Earth would be defenseless, and humanity would be extinct before the day was over. Commander Tony Williams had never seen Earth. He was born in a hollowed-out asteroid that drifted through space like a piece of dead rock. The asteroid was called Haven Base, and it was home to 3,000 humans who lived in tunnels carved deep beneath the surface. Tony was 35 years old and had spent his entire life hiding from the Zephyrians, who thought they had killed every human in the galaxy. 50 years ago, the base was completely dark from the outside. No lights, no radio signals, no heat. Signatures that alien sensors could detect. The humans who lived there had learned to be invisible. They recycled everything and grew their food in underground gardens lit by dim artificial suns. Children played quietly in the corridors and spoke in whispers, even when no one else was around. Tony taught the children about Earth and the war that had destroyed their homeworld. He showed them pictures of blue skies and green forests, and told them stories about cities with millions of people. The children listened carefully, but they had trouble understanding what it would be like to live on a planet where you could go outside without a spacesuit. Most of the children had been born in the hidden bases scattered throughout the asteroid belt. They knew that humans had once lived on planets and flown openly through space, but that seemed like a fairy tale to them. Their real world was the network of secret tunnels and the constant fear of being discovered by the Zephyrians. Dr. Nathan Pierce worked in a laboratory deep inside Haven Base, where he continued the research that Dr. Lisa Carter had started before. Earth was destroyed. Nathan had been Lisa's student, and he had access to all of her notes and research data. For 50 years, he had been studying the pieces of Zephyrian technology that the refugees had managed to save. The work was slow and dangerous. The alien technology was far more advanced than anything humans had ever built. Every experiment risked creating an explosion that could destroy the entire base and kill everyone inside. But Nathan kept working because he knew that understanding. The alien technology was humanity's only hope of ever fighting back. Nathan had made several important discoveries over the years. He learned that Zephyrian ships used a type of engine that could bend space and time. Their weapons worked by breaking apart the basic forces that held atoms together. Their shields could turn solid matter into energy and back again. All of these things should have been impossible, but the aliens made them look easy. The most important discovery came when Nathan figured out how to copy some of the simpler alien devices. He built a machine that could make small objects invisible by bending light around them. It was crude compared to real Zephyrian technology, but it worked. For the first time in 50 years, humans had a way to hide that the aliens could not detect. Engineer Maya Santos used Nathan's invisibility device to design new kinds of spaceships. Maya had grown up on a generation ship that drifted through empty space disguised as space junk. She understood better than anyone how important it was for humans to stay hidden from alien sensors. Maya's first invisible ship was tiny, barely big enough for one person. but it could fly right past Zephyrian patrol ships without being detected. She called it the Ghost and used it to scout alien positions throughout the galaxy. What she found during these scouting missions changed everything humans thought they knew about their enemies. The Zephyrians had not stopped with destroying humanity. Maya discovered the remains of dozens of other civilizations that had been wiped out by the aliens. Some had been destroyed recently, while others had been extinct. For thousands of years, the Zephyrians were not just humanity's enemies. They were the enemies of all intelligent life in the galaxy. Maya found records showing that the aliens had destroyed over 3,000 different species. Each attack followed the same pattern. The Zephyrians would identify a species that was developing advanced technology. Then they would launch a surprise attack designed to kill every member of that species in a matter of days. They were systematic and thorough, and they never left survivors. Captain Luke Davis commanded the first human attack mission in 50 years. His ship was built using technology that Nathan had copied from the aliens and made invisible using Maya's improvements. The ship was small and carried only 12 people, but it was armed with weapons that no Zephyrian had ever seen before. Luke's target was a Zephyrian supply depot in the Vega system. The depot was lightly defended because the aliens believed that no one in the galaxy was capable of threatening them anymore. They had grown careless after 50 years of easy victories over species that could not fight back effectively. The attack lasted exactly 3 minutes. Luke's ship appeared next to the depot without warning and fired a single shot from a weapon that Nathan had designed. The weapon used the same principles as Zephyrian technology, but in reverse. Instead of taking matter apart, crushed it together until it collapsed into a tiny point of incredibly dense material. The depot simply disappeared. One moment it was there, and the next moment there was nothing but empty space. The few Zephyrian ships that were docked at the depot were destroyed so quickly that they never had time to send a distress signal. From the alien perspective, the depot had simply vanished without explanation. The Zephyrians spent weeks investigating what had happened to their supply depot. Their best scientists examined the area where it had been destroyed, but found no clues about what kind of weapon could have caused such complete destruction. They finally decided that there must have been some kind of accident with the depot's power systems. Dr. Pierce monitored Zephyrian communications and was amazed by their reaction to the attack. The aliens seemed genuinely confused about what had happened. They had become so used to being the most advanced species in the galaxy that they could not imagine anyone else developing weapons that could threaten them. Nathan realized that humanity had gained an enormous advantage. The Zephyrians still thought that all humans were dead. They were not looking for human ships or watching for human attacks. Their entire military was designed to destroy primitive species that used simple weapons and predictable tactics. But humans were no longer primitive. 50 years of hiding and studying alien technology had changed them into something new. They had learned patience from living in secret bases. They had learned cunning from avoiding alien patrols. Most importantly, they had learned to think differently about technology and warfare. The attack on the supply depot was just the beginning. Captain Davis's success proved that humans could strike at Zephyrian targets and escape without being detected. More importantly, it proved that human weapons could destroy alien installations that were supposed to be invulnerable. Tony Williams called a meeting of all the hidden base commanders. For the first time in 50 years, they discussed the possibility of fighting back against the Zephyrians instead of just hiding from them. The children who had been born in the dark tunnels listened as the adults talked about taking revenge for Earth and all the other worlds that had been destroyed. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity was not extinct. The species that had been marked for destruction had instead evolved into something that the Zephyrians had never encountered before. The hunted were about to become the hunters. General Patricia Moore had been waiting for this moment for 30 years. She stood in the main command center of the largest hidden human base watching screens that showed the positions of every human ship in the galaxy. For the first time since Earth was destroyed, the scattered human communities were working together as one united force. Patricia had been a young lieutenant when the Zephyrians attacked Earth. She escaped on one of the last evacuation ships and spent decades helping to build the network of secret bases that kept humanity alive. Now she was the supreme commander of all human military forces, and she had a plan that would change everything. The plan was simple but ambitious. Instead of hiding from the Zephyrians, humanity would hunt them down and destroy them completely. Every alien base, every alien ship, every alien world would be targeted for destruction. The species that had tried to wipe out humanity would face the same fate they had given to thousands of other civilizations. Commander Alex Turner led the first major assault mission. His target was a Zephyrian research facility in the Sirius system where the aliens studied genetic samples from the species they had destroyed. Alex commanded a fleet of 20 invisible ships, each one armed with weapons that could destroy entire space stations in seconds. The research facility was enormous, bigger than most human cities had been before the war. It orbited a dead planet that had once been home to a peaceful species called the Hilari. The Zephyrians had killed every Kalari 50,000 years ago, but they still kept samples of Kalari DNA in their research labs. Alex's ships approached the facility without being detected. The Zephyrian guards never saw them coming. The attack began at exactly midnight station time, when all the alien researchers would be sleeping. 20 human ships opened fire simultaneously, and the research facility was destroyed in less than 10 seconds. But Alex's mission was not just about destruction. His teams boarded the facility before it was completely destroyed and downloaded every piece of information from the alien computers. What they found in those computers shocked even the humans who thought they understood how evil the Zephyrians were. Dr. Caroline Young was the lead scientist who analyzed the captured alien data. Caroline had spent her entire adult life studying Zephyrian technology, but nothing had prepared her for what she found in the research facility's records. The aliens were not just killing other species for military reasons. They were collecting genetic material from every species they destroyed and using it for horrific experiments. The records showed that the Zephyrians had destroyed over 3,000 different civilizations across the galaxy. Each time they killed a species, they would take samples of their DNA and store it in research facilities like the one Alex had just destroyed. The aliens were trying to create some kind of perfect hybrid species using the best traits from all the races they had murdered. Caroline found detailed records about humanity in the alien database. The Zephyrians had been watching human development for over 1,000 years before they finally decided to attack. They were particularly interested in human creativity and adaptability. The aliens had planned to use human genetic material to make their own species more innovative and flexible. The discovery that the Zephyrians had been planning humanity's destruction for centuries made the human commanders even more determined to fight back. This was not just a war for survival anymore. It was a war to make sure that no other species would ever suffer the same fate that humanity had endured. Captain Danny Foster commanded a stealth ship that was designed to track Zephyrian hunting fleets. Danny's job was to find alien military forces before they could attack their next target. His ship was so advanced that it could follow Zephyrian vessels through hyperspace without being detected. Danny had been tracking one particular alien fleet for 3 months. The fleet contained over 50 warships and was moving toward a star system where a young aquatic species had recently developed space travel. According to intercepted communications, the Zephyrians planned to destroy this new species within the next few weeks. The aquatic people called themselves the depth swimmers, and they had no idea that they were about to be attacked. Their technology was primitive compared to both humans and Zephyrians. They had barely managed to build simple spaceships that could travel between the planets in their home system. They had no weapons that could threaten anyone, and no knowledge that dangerous aliens existed. Danny watched as the Zephyrian fleet prepared for another routine extermination. The aliens had done this so many times that they treated it like a normal job. They would arrive in the system, destroy all the depth swimmer ships and colonies, then move on to find their next target. It was systematic murder on a galactic scale, but this time would be different. Admiral Laura Baker had positioned a human task force between the Zephyrian fleet and the depth swimmer homeworld. The human ships were invisible to alien sensors, and armed with weapons that the Zephyrians had never encountered before. When the alien fleet emerged from hyperspace, they would find humanity waiting for them. The Battle of Proxima Centauri began when the Zephyrian fleet dropped out of hyperspace, expecting to find a defenseless star system. Instead, they found 50 human warships arranged in a perfect ambush formation. The aliens had no time to react before the human ships opened fire. Admiral Baker had planned the battle carefully. Her ships attacked from 6 different directions at once, using weapons that worked in ways the Zephyrians could not predict or defend against. Some human ships fired energy beams that passed through alien shields like they were not there. Other ships used gravity weapons that crushed Zephyrian vessels into tiny balls of compressed metal. The battle lasted 6 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Zephyrian fleet that had been sent to destroy the depth swimmers was completely annihilated. Not a single alien ship escaped to warn their commanders about what had happened. From the Zephyrian perspective, an entire military fleet had simply vanished without explanation. The surviving Zephyrians sent desperate messages back to their homeworld describing weapons and tactics they had never seen before. But their reports made no sense to the alien commanders. How could a species that had been extinct for 50 years suddenly appear with technology that was superior to Zephyrian military science? Deong Young intercepted and decoded the alien distress calls. For the first time in their species' history, the Zephyrians were afraid. They had always been the hunters, the ones who decided which species lived and which ones died. Now they were facing an enemy that could destroy their most powerful fleets without taking any losses. The fear in the alien communications was something that human translators had never heard before. The Zephyrians were beginning to understand that they were no longer the apex predators of the galaxy. Something had evolved in the darkness between the stars, something that had learned from 50 years of hiding and planning and preparing for revenge. Patricia Moore read the intercepted alien messages with satisfaction. The Zephyrians were starting to realize that humanity was not extinct. More importantly, they were starting to understand that the species they had tried to destroy had become something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The hunters had become the hunted, and the real war was just beginning. The Zephyrian High Command finally understood what their field commanders had been reporting for months. The humans were not extinct. Somehow the species they had destroyed 60 years ago had survived and evolved into something more dangerous than anything they had ever faced before. Admiral Kevin Martinez stood on the bridge of his flagship looking down at the Zephyrian homeworld. The planet was beautiful with purple oceans and silver cities that sparkled in the light of their twin suns. It was hard to believe that such a lovely world was home to the species that had murdered trillions of innocent beings across the galaxy. Kevin commanded the largest human fleet ever assembled. Over 500 ships surrounded the Zephyrian homeworld, each one invisible to alien sensors and armed with weapons that could destroy entire continents. The fleet represented every surviving human community working together for one final mission. The humans had spent 2 years tracking down the location of the Zephyrian homeworld. The aliens had kept their home system secret for thousands of years, hiding it behind false star charts and fake navigational data. But human intelligence agents had finally pieced together enough clues to find the planet where their genocide had been planned and organized. Dr. Helen Roberts worked in the science section of Kevin's flagship, studying the Zephyrian capital city through powerful telescopes. The city was enormous, stretching across an entire continent with buildings that reached high into the atmosphere. Helen estimated that over 2 billion Zephyrians lived on the planet below. Helen had been one of the refugees who escaped from Earth as a child. She had spent her entire life studying the aliens who had destroyed her homeworld. Now she was finally seeing their civilization up close, and she was surprised by how advanced and beautiful it was. The Zephyrians had built an incredible society using knowledge stolen from the thousands of species they had murdered. The alien architecture incorporated design elements from dozens of extinct civilizations. Helen could see building styles that had belonged to species that were destroyed millions of years ago. The Zephyrians had taken the best ideas from every race they killed and used them to make their own world more beautiful and functional. Captain Sean Phillips commanded the fighter squadron that would lead the first wave of attacks. Sean had been born on one of the hidden asteroid bases and had never seen a real planet until today. He found it disturbing that such a peaceful-looking world could be home to the galaxy's most ruthless killers. Sean's ships were the most advanced fighters that humanity had ever built. They could move faster than light, become completely invisible, and carry enough firepower to destroy entire cities. His pilots were all volunteers who had lost their families to Zephyrian attacks. They were eager for revenge, but Sean had ordered them to wait for the right moment. The Zephyrian defense fleet that rose to meet the human ships was impressive by any normal standard. Over 1,000 alien warships took defensive positions around their homeworld. Their weapons had conquered thousands of species, and their shields had never been penetrated by enemy fire. The aliens were confident that they could defend their home against any attack, but the Zephyrians were not facing a normal enemy. Sean's fighters moved through their formations like ghosts, appearing and disappearing faster than the alien sensors could track them. Human weapons struck from impossible angles using technology that turned Zephyrian advantages into weaknesses. The battle for the Zephyrian homeworld was unlike anything that had ever happened in galactic history. Human ships flickered in and out of existence, striking at alien vessels with weapons that the defenders could not understand or counter. Within hours, the entire Zephyrian defense fleet had been destroyed without inflicting a single loss on the attacking humans. Admiral Martinez opened a communication channel to the planet below and offered terms that his predecessors would have considered incredibly generous. Complete surrender of all Zephyrian military forces, full disclosure of information about all the species they had destroyed, war crime trials for their leadership, and permanent restrictions on their ability to travel beyond their home system. The human offer was broadcast across the entire planet so that every Zephyrian could hear it. Kevin explained that humanity did not want to become like the aliens they were fighting. If the Zephyrians agreed to surrender and face justice for their crimes, then their species would be allowed to survive on their homeworld under human supervision. The Zephyrian leadership rejected the human terms within hours. Their response was broadcast across the planet with the same arrogance they had always shown. They declared that no species was superior to the Zephyrians, and that they would rather die than submit to humans they considered inferior. The aliens prepared for a final battle rather than accept responsibility for their crimes. Dr. Roberts had been working on a special weapon during the voyage to the Zephyrian homeworld. The weapon was based on the same technology that the aliens had used to destroy human colonies 60 years ago, but it had been improved and modified using decades of human research. Helen called it the quantum resonance cascade, and it was designed to be the most humane weapon of mass destruction ever created. The weapon did not cause pain or suffering. Instead, it simply caused the quantum forces that held matter together to become unstable. Anything touched by the cascade would quickly phase out of existence, as if it had never been there at all. It was the perfect weapon for ending a war without creating unnecessary cruelty. On the fourth day of the siege, Helen activated the quantum resonance cascade from orbit around the Zephyrian homeworld. The weapon's effect spread across the planet's surface at the speed of light, touching every city and every living being. The Zephyrians had just enough time to realize what was happening before they simply stopped existing. Within 6 hours, the Zephyrian species had joined the 3,000 civilizations they had eliminated over the course of their history. Their extinction was complete, absolute, and irreversible. The planet below was empty of intelligent life, but otherwise undamaged. The cities still stood, and the oceans still sparkled, but there was no one left to see them. Admiral Martinez read aloud the final message that had been recorded in Earth's archives before the planet was destroyed. The message had been left by his grandmother, who died in the bombing of New York 60 years earlier. She had asked that humanity remember what was taken from them and make sure that no other species would ever suffer the same fate. Kevin looked down at the empty world below and realized that humanity had kept its promise. The Zephyrians would never again destroy an innocent civilization. The galaxy was finally safe from the species that had appointed themselves as judges of which races deserved to live and which ones deserved to die. But as Dr. Roberts studied the readings from their weapon, she began to worry about what humanity had become during their long quest for justice. They had developed technology that could destroy entire species in a matter of hours. They had become efficient killers who could eliminate any threat to galactic peace. Helen wondered if other species in the galaxy would someday look at humanity the same way the humans had once looked at the Zephyrians. The line between justice and genocide was thinner than anyone wanted to admit. Humanity had won their war for survival, but in the process, they had become something that might be even more dangerous than their enemies. The hunt was finally over. The species that had tried to erase humanity from existence was now extinct. But somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, evolution continued. Its endless work, and new hunters were always being born.